Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Gomez. I'm a senior biomedical science major at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley in Brownsville. I'm partnered today with my co-investigators Rebecca Schlatter and Brian McSumi, both graduate students of the Department of Health and Human Performance, also in Brownsville. Our study today is virtual reality exercising versus traditional exercise training, a comparative study on physiological and rate of perceived exertion responses among young males. Just to give some more background into our study, there's become a growing trend. Approximately 25% of adults and 80% of adolescents worldwide are physically inactive, largely due to a societal and lifestyle change of the modern time. We just aren't exercising as much as we used to. And so this trend is alarming and it underscores the need to innovate and improve our physical activity. We thought of why not use virtual reality? So we implemented virtual reality technology within our population as a tool to increase engagement and motivation. Virtual reality provides a total immersive experience in where you actually feel like you're taken out from your living room, from your bedroom into this environment, um, a- attaching you into a new cognitive experience. And so our current study aimed to comparatively look between the effectiveness of virtual reality exercise, VRE, versus traditional resistance exercise, TRE, in eliciting physiological responses as well as rate of perceived exertion responses, overall satisfaction as well. Consequently, VR emerged as a viable low risk alternative. And so, particularly for the sedentary population and then some, this sort of technology could really be implemented on a wide scale. Once again, the purpose of our study was to isolate the physiologic and rate of perceived exertion responses, as well as subjective enjoyment from their virtual reality exercises and traditional resistance exercises across differing intensities. I'm going to give it to Brian to talk over the methodologies of the study.
For this study, we recruited 12 healthy adult males, and they voluntarily participated in our study. These subjects were then screened using the Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire, otherwise known as the PARQ, from the American College of Sports Medicine, to ensure that their health and fitness criteria, that they meet the health and fitness criterion. They were not also engaging in organized physical exercise of no more than 3 days per week prior to engaging in our study. So our study protocol was broken down into 6 sessions. The first session is where we had our pre-exercise assessments. Here we administered the informed consent where the participants got an overview of the whole study and what could they expect and what we expect from them as they participate within our study. So after completing our informed consent and all of the paperwork, we then collected anthropometric measurements such as age, sex, height, weight, and resting heart rates and blood pressure. We also then calculated maximum heart rate and 85% of the heart rate max in order to ensure that each participant was safely exercising during all of the sessions afterwards. Sessions 2 through 6, this is where we had our exercise procedures. Participants were randomly assigned to 5 exercise sessions of non-consecutive days. These exercise modalities included virtual reality cycling, traditional stationary cycling, virtual reality boxing, traditional shadow boxing, and of course, our control group, which is our sedentary sitting group. Each participant had a unique session order in order to reduce both physiological and psychological biases. The cycling sessions used the equipment of the Monarch ergometer cycling machine, and each cycling session lasted 30 minutes each. The resistance of the bike was then adjusted to maintain a moderate intensity of their 40 to 60% of their heart rate reserve. And using for the virtual reality component, the virtual reality cycling, we used the MetaQuest 2 VR headset for a high definition virtual cycling trail. For the boxing sessions, unlike the cycling sessions, each of them lasted around 20 minutes. Before every boxing session, there was a 5-minute familiarization period with the study personnel to ensure that proper form and safety was maintained and prior to engaging in the actual boxing session, both virtual and traditional. We used the Les Mills Body Combat VR application, specifically the full body Hype 3 session to emulate high intensity boxing maneuvers, which would equate to greater than 60% of heart rate reserve. Of course, like the cycling sessions, we use the MetaQuest 2 VR headset in a high definition exercise studio. Throughout each of the exercise sessions, the participants either exercise from 20 to 30 minutes unless they experience volitional fatigue. Heart rate, blood pressure, and perceived exertion or RPE were continuously monitored using the polar heart rate monitors and the Borg scale. Measurements of these heart rate, blood pressure, and perceived exertion were taken pre-exercise and every 5 minutes during the exercise and of course post-exercise. After all the sessions were completed, towards the end, the PACES questionnaire was then administered post-sessions to evaluate the subjective enjoyment of each exercise modality. For statistical analysis, data was analyzed using IBS SPSS software with results expressed as means plus minus standard deviation. And I will pass it on to Rebecca so she can discuss results and conclusion.
Yes. The results indicated significant pre to post exercise differences in heart rate, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and rate of perceived exertion across all exercise conditions, except particularly diastolic blood pressure did not increase significantly pre to post the virtual cycling, as illustrated by Figure 1. Significant condition and time interactions for heart rate were identified between the virtual boxing and the traditional boxing, meaning that the difference between pre to post was more significant in the virtual boxing sessions than in the traditional boxing. The virtual boxing did elicit a higher heart rate response. Despite this finding, there was not a significant difference between the rate of perceived exertion reported between virtual boxing and the traditional boxing. So considering this and the PACES questionnaire, we had found that there were discrepancies in subjective experiences observed between the virtual reality exercises and the traditional exercises. And this may have long-term implications for adherence and enjoyment of physical activity, particularly favoring VR. During the PACES questionnaire, the virtual reality modalities were reported to be more enjoyable, that they were more absorbed in the activity, and there were heightened trends showing that the virtual reality exercises were more gratifying than the traditional. The traditional exercises were reported to make the participants feel as though they'd rather be doing something else. So this is beneficial for individuals struggling to adhere to regular exercise who find traditional exercise less enjoyable. The virtual reality offers kind of a mind-body disconnect where the exercise they are doing, it does not seem as vigorous, it does not seem as difficult as their body is responding to it. Also from our data, we had found that the virtual modes of exercise may suggest a potential psychosocial influence from the game component or the sensory input from the headset, whether it being the visual input or the audio input. As I'd mentioned before, despite reporting similar rates of perceived exertion levels, the subjects experience a significantly greater heart rate response during the virtual boxing compared to the traditional boxing. This potentially suggests that the immersion into the game changes the perception of exercise, making it more enjoyable, as backed up by the PACES questionnaire and their subjective responses through RPE. Additionally, there was no significant difference that was observed in diastolic blood pressure from pre to post in any of the other exercise sessions except the virtual cycling, in which there was not a significant increase. This could be attributed to a lower level of sympathetic nervous system activity compared to the other sessions. I'll hand this over to Thomas.
All right, so further research should explore possible psychological factors underlying the subjective responses that we gathered from our participants. And so this could investigate the effectiveness of virtual reality exercise interventions in promoting long term health adherence or exercise adherence. Insights gained from our research could open new avenues for integrating VR technology, not so much into the sedentary individuals, but into a broader aspect of health practices or rehabilitation to improve overall health outcomes. Once again, thank you for being here. We want to say thank you from Rebecca, Brian, and myself.